What is going on, Notre Dame fans? Mike Singer, blueandgold.com, with former Irish captain and linebacker Mike Goolsby. Our Sunday night show, the Mike Goolsby Show, is back by very popular demand. Everyone's always asking me, where's Mike Goolsby? Where's Mike Goolsby? So here he is, another live show where he's going to break down Notre Dame football, the game this past weekend, and what is next for the Fighting Irish. So if you're with us live, make sure you hit that thumbs up. Watching back, do the same. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you are not yet. If you're listening via podcast, appreciate you. Leave us a 5-star review and some nice comments. Mike, we will go right to just kind of your opening thoughts. We have a script of some things we want to discuss, but wherever you want to take this opening segment, what'd you think about the game on Saturday?
Yeah, it was a fun game. It was in our house, Mike. My girlfriend is a Wisconsin alum, so we had a bit of a
Right.
house divided. So that added an element of just entertainment to it. In a lot of ways, more of the same. In another bucket, there was quite a bit of improvement specific to the defensive side of the ball. This team it's a fun team to root for. It's a frustrating team to pull for, but ultimately it was a fun experiment, a fun game to watch, and it's almost like a Disney movie, man. It's like third string quarterback, fourth string offensive lineman. We're still figuring out a way to win. So that's the ultimate takeaway. The offensive line is becoming a major problem, and we're going to talk about that today. And like you're trying to find like a glimmer of hope or just a shred of improvement there, and you've got to really dig into the film to try and find that, and be very intentional about trying to find that.
Right.
But overall, fun game. I mean, it was a fun game. You know, my dad texted me. He's like, "Hey, I'm looking forward to watching the YouTube show tonight." And he's like, "I'm not sure what I watched yesterday." You know, speaking of referencing the game, and that's true. It's like, gosh, what was that? Um, I think it was apparent, Mike. And this is just a takeaway. Defense played their butts off. You can really start to see Freeman's identity in the kind of the scheme's overall approach starting to really take shape. I think it was good for the guys, for the team to get on the road, and we touched on that last week. Just to have a fresh environment, um, that was pretty apparent. But we're 4-0. You're figuring out ways to win games. Winning a college football game is not an easy feat. Um, our offense didn't play great. Their offense didn't play great. Their defense played really good, and our defense played better. And then special teams. I mean, there's three phases, so we won in two of the three phases, and the offensive phase was kind of a draw.
Sure. So we're certainly going to talk about the Notre Dame offense. I want to stick to more of the defensive side to kind of get the show rolling to begin with. I mean, Florida State game, it certainly struggled in that second half. Toledo game, wasn't a great performance either. Turned a corner against Purdue and then really hit its stride. What did you see from that unit specifically, Mike? And then whether it was I would imagine what the answer is here. The D-line linebackers, defensive backs, which unit do you think played the best?
Our D line is stupid
That's
good.
what I thought
It
you were going to
doesn't
say.
even.
Yeah.
I mean, it's truly. It's like whether it's 99, 95, 56, 54, number 7, like it doesn't even matter who's in there in terms of the substitution package and rolling guys in and out. It doesn't matter. They're studs, which is a bit ironic because so much of Coach Freeman's scheme is built around bringing additional pressure from either a corner, linebacker, or safeties. We've seen Hamilton blitz a couple times this past week. So it's almost like you don't even need the additional blitzers because our front four is so strong. Linebackers played great, super aggressive. Drew White seemed to play a much more free this week, which was fun and good for him. It was fun to see him get fired up, and I think again I'm going to attribute a little bit of that to the playing in a new venue at Soldiers Field. One person I do want to give a shout out to on the defensive side of the ball is Cam Hart. Kind of obvious, right? Coming up with 2 picks, but you can see he starts to working, like he's starting to work technique. He's still relatively new-ish to that position. But Mike, if Coach Freeman has a corner that he can really rely on to hold up in man coverage and work technique, uh, shoot, but you couple him with Kyle Hamilton. That's something that we haven't had in some time, is a reliable corner that can run and make plays. So I don't want to minimize that at all. That was a really, really nice thing to see. Um, Again, just the specifics of like both of those balls that he picked off, the technique was perfect and the confidence was there to drive on that ball and go make a play. Um, but overall, what did you see from the defense? Just getting into a little bit more specifics is like multiple fronts. We saw a lot of like 5-2 this week, again, because you're playing a team like a Wisconsin and a quarterback um, who isn't tremendous in Graham Mertz at this point in his development. So it allowed us to play kind of that run stopping front. So, and we got away from that three-man kind of mixed front that we've seen. So just more multiple looks from Coach Freeman, more things for a Cincinnati next week to game plan for. And just holistically, the effort was there, and dudes on the defensive side of the ball were having fun. And that's sometimes we as fans, like, you can get too caught up into the schematics and the personnel and the play calling and whatever. But, on that side of the ball, it's about effort and playing hard. And you saw that this week.
I I asked this to Tim Hyde last night after the game. Was
Okay.
it what should get more credit? The Notre Dame defense playing great or the Wisconsin offense stinking? And Tim went with the Notre Dame defense. Personally, for me, as well as the defense did, that Wisconsin offense was putrid. Mertz was terrible. They really couldn't get anything going, and that Wisconsin rushing attack is not what it's been in years past. And again, maybe that's in large part due to the Notre Dame defense line just being so strong that they couldn't get anything going there. But I don't know, Mike. What do you think?
Well, Tim's a coach, so that's his answer, and that's the right answer. The defense gets more credit. Um, you're trying to build confidence in the system and build a level of comfort in Coach Freeman's system. Um, and like, you're trying to throw a party in the locker room after the game, and that's what you're able to do this week. So it's like, yeah, you're not going to go on the flight home and be like, man, that Mertz was terrible. You're, as a coach and as a leader, you're going to look at when we played our asses off. And we can build and build and build week to week to week. So I just think you have a point in that. Yes, Wisconsin was horrid,
Right.
but you're playing against an incredible defensive front. So it's like, I mean, that's the yin and yang of football, Mike. Like, and everything's kind of week to week. So I mean, Mertz might go out next week and throw 4 touchdowns as the 4 picks. But no, the credit goes to the defense. Absolutely.
Sure. Sure. What would the odds have been before the game on Drew White having a pick six? Pretty slim,
Oh, I don't
Mike.
know. Yeah, plus 1,800 or something. Yeah. So again, I'm critical of Drew because he and I played the same position, right? And but he is your team captain, a team captain on the defensive side of the ball. So, I mean, I'm obviously ecstatic for him that he was able to not only get the pick but score as well. So, yeah, it's just stuff like that does wonders for a player's confidence. It really does. And then we've talked about, and I try to talk about this, the importance of that turnover ratio in the game of football without sounding like, Captain Obvious, but I don't know. You probably got the data in front of you, Mike, but I don't know how we're plus what on the season in terms of turnovers. So I would like to think that if we're plus 5, whatever it is, I'd like to think that as far as Coach Reese's play calling and Coach Kelly's overall game plan, if we know that we can kind of turn the ball over, and I played on a defense like this in 2002. I mean, we were turning the ball over on defense 2-3 times a game, somewhat like miraculously. But you would like to think or be hopeful that Coach Kelly and Coach Reese could be a little bit more aggressive in terms of their play calling and offensive approach. If like, hey, we threw a pick, we turned the ball over on offense, but we're still up. We're still +1, and we're still +2 overall for the game. It doesn't hurt as much, you know?
Yeah. Appreciate everyone joining us live. Make sure you hit that thumbs up for watching here on YouTube. Appreciate those listening back on podcast as well. Mike Singer and Mike Goolsby starting off talking about the Notre Dame defense. You see the stats up on the screen for those on YouTube. That Notre Dame offense, 242 yards total, just 3 rushing yards. Wisconsin had 314 total yards. The Notre Dame offense, 17 first downs, third downs. Man, look at Wisconsin, 1 of
Incredible.
14
Incredible.
on third downs, Mike. And they only had one play, Wisconsin did, one play of 10-plus rushing yards. Just one. Notre Dame
Hmm.
had 0, but how big is that? I mean, it's obvious, but how big is that third down, 1 of 14? What were they doing? I mean, is there anything, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but is there anything that they were really doing on third down specifically to get Wisconsin off the field?
Yeah, well, Joel Klatt talked about this during the broadcast in terms of staying on schedule. So to him, what staying on schedule means is it's 1st and 10. Okay, we got 4 yards. Now we're 2nd and 6. And then we got 3 yards. Okay, so now you're at a manageable third down where you can be multiple. It's not as obvious. Whereas we were able to shut them down on 1st and 2nd down, and then you're making a kid like Mertz be uncomfortable and have to throw into this multiple defensive front. Where's the pressure coming from? A top 5 draft pick at safety. So yeah, you're making a kid like that uncomfortable. But that long run that you mentioned, that's maybe 2 or even 3 weeks in a row where we've seen a similar type play where they have like the closed end, Mike, where there's not a receiver out there. So it's the closed end. And then you're asking specifically back-to-back weeks, you're asking Clarence Lewis to come in and run support and kind of close off that edge. In 2 weeks in a row, we've given that up. So you'll probably see it next week as well, just those outside zones into the boundary to a closed end side. So that's something that's got to be shored up. But, week to week, Mike, as we watch this defense evolve and come together, if you go back to week 1 against Florida State, there was like, oh, shoot, there was holes all over the place. And it's like every week we just patch up another couple holes. So as I'm watching us play, and this is, again, not against a top-tier offensive opponent this week, but you play who you play. The schedule is what it is. It seems like we're getting more and more of those kind of gap schemes, kind of misses where they're getting shored up. So that's more reason for optimism. It's like we're not leaky at all, and we're turning the ball over. I'd like to see more sacks. The quarterback's not comfortable, but we're not really getting home as much as I'd like to see. But I think that'll come.
Yeah. Yeah, Notre Dame's sack total, how many did they have?
I think it
Sacks,
was
yeah, just
2.
once. Yeah, Adam Alola,
1.
Jason
Okay.
Adamilola, 1 sack.
And that happened to be a strip sack, right?
Right. Yes, he forced the fumble, and then
Klosky
5.
recovered it.
Yep, 5 quarterback hurries. Riley Mills got in there once. Patelho twice. His first action on the defensive line. Howard Cross. Someone in the YouTube comments, Jamie says Howard Cross stepped up and played big. Certainly agree with Kurt Heines being out. Howard Cross played a nice game. J.D. Bertrand had a QB hurry as well. So how about 4 picks? Cam Hart, someone we talked about in the offseason. If Notre Dame's going to have a solid cornerback room, Cam Hart was going to need to be the guy. So certainly we're impressed with him. Anything else on the defense, Mike? Whether, any individual shout-outs with some guys, anything schematically, anything else on the defense that you saw that you want to mention before we move on to the offense?
Yeah, I think you're talking about your 2 interior guys, Cross and Lacey, and missing Heinisch, and you would think, your average Notre Dame or an average football fan would think like, oh, missing a bruiser in the middle like Kurt is really going to hurt you against a team like Wisconsin. But having played that linebacker position and lived behind those guys, like there's 2 styles of an interior to defensive lineman. There's somebody that's just going to maul people and beat people up and drive people in the backfield and keep guys off of me as a linebacker, or you've got penetrators. And and Cross and Lacey are both penetrators. So, uh, which one would you prefer? It depends, but it's nice to have guys where we're talking about you're putting somebody in the third and obvious, and I can get a rush from the inside, and I got guys like Foskey outside. It's pretty special. I think Kaiser played a little bit up and down, but he played a lot. I don't know if I saw Isaiah Pryor out there. That was obviously scheme based. You know, you're going against more heavy fronts with Wisconsin. Obviously, he had his pick six. Um, but I think that was probably really good experience for Kaiser to be able to play an entire game. But yeah, Cam Hart is Notre Dame hasn't had. It's just traditionally, dude, we don't have great corner play,
Just those
and
dudes out there, right?
yeah, which is what we talked about last season, kind of winding down our last couple podcasts, going into your Bama games, right, and your Clemson games. Like, man, we need athletes on the outside, and I feel like Cam Hart just physically looks the part, nice and long, and he's starting to learn the technique and trust the technique. So that's big reason for optimism. Being able to pair him up with Hamilton back there, it's a nice luxury for Coach Freeman and his scheme in particular.
Definitely. So perfectly timed super chat from David Knight. As we move into discussing the offensive side of the ball, he says, "Money Mike and Big Mike, is Jack the opposite of Ian? One takes off too quick. One stays in. Looking for receivers. The Notre Dame fan base is clamoring to replace him with Tyler Buckner, Drew Pine. Thoughts, Mike?"
Are we getting into this, Mike? Are we turning the page, talking offense?
We're
And
talking offense. I really have considered like this show kind of morphing into we both have a nice tumbler of whiskey on ice just to sip during this show. We might have to do that. I don't know. It might offend some people. I don't know. I don't want to offend anybody, but also like I think that might be needed for this show, especially when we're talking about
we could go
quarterbacks.
with Guinness. I mean, it's the official drink of the Fighting Irish football program. So I would be opposed to
Gotta
that.
go to the
But
grocery
yeah,
store then.
to answer this super chat, and thank you, David. I think is Jack the opposite of Jack is like it's kind of an enigma. I'm going to continue to say that I've seen him regress week to week. I don't think he's incredibly accurate, Mike, and I don't think he's got the greatest arm strength in the world. I don't believe that he could push the ball 50 yards downfield, 45, 50 in an accurate fashion. I don't believe it. I haven't seen it. Again, the yin and yang conversation, Mike. If the offensive line wasn't so damn leaky, specifically, I mean, we need to talk about that, but the offensive line is garbage can. And because of that, our running game is trash. So a lot of that pressure falls on the Cone, but then you bring in Tyler, and Tyler's had some success, and you bring in Pine, and Pine had some success. Like was throwing the ball, and it's like Jack Cone isn't the only person that's willing to pull the trigger and push it, and he'll push the ball downfield, literally push it with that kind of throwing motion of his. But we're not completing enough passes. He's a 50% completion percentage, give or take, over the last couple, 2, 3 weeks. So some of this, bringing up Ian, kind of getting back to David's question, I think a lot of this is in some form or fashion, it's like an indictment on Ian Book because he was so unwilling to pull the trigger. And now that we've seen somebody pull the trigger, it's like we're like drooling all over ourselves, like, oh my God, that was actually a 20-yard pass. But you got to be able to complete them too. So, and I don't think I'm calling out Kevin Austin a little bit. I thought he was, again, disengaged last weekend. And then this week, it's clear they're trying to make him the number one. And sometimes Kevin, like, I hope somebody just kind of grabs him by the shoulders and shakes him. Like, this is your opportunity, man. And
Mike, let me
you
interrupt you.
still see.
What'd
Go ahead.
you see from Kevin? Stats: 6 receptions, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns, 9 targets, long of 36. So what did you
Be
see from
special,
Kevin?
Mike.
Yeah.
Be special. Be special is what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think you've got some God-given attributes. You have to do more. Where they throw a back shoulder fade, and that little number one, that little corner for Wisconsin was a good player. So credit to him. But they kind of threw a back shoulder fade, kind of a 50-50 ball we love. And I just didn't see like the willingness to go up and high point it and like go get it. And then they kind of run an inside screen to him and he sort of falls down, kind of picks up 3-4 yards where it could have been more. I'm asking you to do more. Like they're clearly trying to feature you and act like you deserve it. Just do a little bit more. Like you understand. So the stat line looks great, but when you go back and watch the game, there was some plays that he left on the field, and hopefully um, he's holding or somebody's going to hold him to a little bit higher standard of play because this is your time, bro. And you got to go do just a little bit more, right?
Sure. Sure. All right. Another super chat here from Matt. He says, tell us that we can have any hope for the offensive line. They seem to be regressing. I get that Wisconsin is a tough defense, but it doesn't seem like they are going anywhere. Go Irish. Love the show. Appreciate it, Matt. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, Matt, dude, Matt, I don't know if it could be much worse. I mean, like, have we hit rock bottom yet? I'm telling you, if you go left to right, like Tosh Baker, there's still protection errors, like there's whiffs, like where they're just letting people go. Zeke Correll, you've got a third string young kid outside of you. So like I feel like Zeke Correll's always stepping down to help your potential first round draft pick. And Patterson, it's like, no, bro. And I don't know what protections are being called, but look out to your left and help the kid out. I've seen we talked about Kurt Heinisch in terms of his body type, right? Just a big kind of short arm bruiser right there in the middle, and that's who Wisconsin was bringing 3 or bringing 4 a lot of times. And the defensive end that was beating Tosh was built like Heinisch. You understand? So when I train kids, Mike, like one of the things I talk about is like the down and distance, the personnel's in the game, where's the ball at on the field, but like personnel. So if I look out and I see a 6'1.5", 300-pound defensive end, what's the thing that I'm probably not going to be fearful of is speed up field. So he's oversetting and then he's just opening up the door inside. So it's like, how could you look at that kid and think that he's going to beat you outside? So wouldn't you hang heavy on the inside, right? I don't get it. I'm sick of watching Cade Madden. I'm sick of it. So somebody is from a leadership perspective, and I don't know if it's Jared at center, and I'm getting honestly a little fired up here. Blood pressure's going up, Mike. Whether it's Jared needs to step up in that O-line room or Coach Quinn, but somebody needs to be made an example of. Somebody needs to get demoted because we're 4 games in, and at this point, like you're accepting mediocrity, and that's not Notre Dame, and that's not Notre Dame offensive line play. So yeah, it's bad, and you just see the same things over and over again. People not moving their feet, and if Kane Mann can't do it, it's not his fault, right? If he's physically limited, like if he can't do it, then get him out of there. So yeah, the O line's bad, and it's really funny, Mike. Sorry, this is my last kind of run on, hopefully, but you looked at this weekend, right? Crazy weekend of college football, right? How many top 10 teams lost? And we talked about this like preseason. If there was one year that Notre Dame could potentially win it all, it might be this year because
Sure.
Clemson's got a new starter, Ohio State's got a new starter, Bama's got a new starter, and they're reloading their entire team. So like on paper, man, this might be the year. And it's like the one glaring weakness right now is the offensive line, and you've got to move people around. I don't know what the answer is, right? But I
Right.
do think that from a leadership perspective, somebody needs to be made an example of and sat down.
Sure. In 20 seconds or less, you mentioned a lot. You mentioned a lot of upsets and a crazy weekend in college football. How did you do? With your lines.
Not well, not well.
No.
Wyoming screwed me. Auburn screwed me. But other than that, I did great. Like NFL today, I went 4 for 4. So, but yeah, not great.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving along. Super chat from David Barnett. Excuse me. And let me find his comment. He says Hamilton got crushed by 2 Wisconsin players and Kelly went nuts. Best 15-yard
I
penalty
heard
of
about
the
that. Yeah,
year.
they didn't show it on TV.
No, they
Yeah.
did not. Players loved it. He says he saw it. He was at the game, 7th row behind the Notre Dame bench. Players loved it. And I believe we had another super chat in here as well. Where did this thing
That's great. Yeah, and yeah, players love, and I don't know what it was, whether it was the jump around, whether it was Pine, and we've talked about this too. Like you got your third string in, you got Tyler, and other players need to step up. It just seemed like the energy level rose to another level, given all those things with Coach Kelly, the penalty, all that stuff kind of happened, uh,
Yeah.
sort of in sync with one another.
Yeah. So appreciate the super chat, David. This is a great comment. I wish my lawn looked as nice as your neighbor's. Holy smokes! I don't think it looks that nice, but I mean, it's not like.
Oh, it's pretty nice. Actually, they were out of town. I mowed it for them yesterday. So yeah.
What? Okay. Never mind. Looks fantastic then. It's very green. Yeah.
You know, it's
very
funny.
nice.
So Marv and Deb, the neighbors across the street, tremendous people. Marv actually watches the show from time to time. So I'll have to
Well, there you
let
go.
him know about
There you
yeah,
go.
it's fantastic.
I apologize. It's a damn good lawn. I'm just scrolling through to see if we have any other super chats. Okay. All right. Staying on the quarterback discussion. Okay. So Jack Cohn's performance. You know, I'm a Jack Cohn guy. I've always been a Jack Cohn guy since Notre Dame got him. I've also been a huge Drew Pine guy.
This is true.
One person on the show last year said that, you know, Pine just looked like a normal Notre Dame student. You know,
Also true.
I've always been a Drew Pine guy. I have a weird memory. Some things just stick with me. That being one of them.
Well, he's 5'11", 190 pounds. I mean, yes.
I got a tweet last night or this morning. Someone said that I'm a Jack Cohn hater. I'm like, you clearly didn't watch the show yesterday. I feel like Cohn was I feel like it was pretty similar to the Purdue performance. Like there was some really good, and there's not really good. But my defense of Cohn is that so much of that game, he's got no protection, no running game. So when he does anything wrong, it's very glaring on him, but he gets absolutely no help really around him. So it's difficult for a quarterback. That's kind of my, my
No,
especially for his
that's
skill set, right? As not a mobile guy. And
so
I know
what
we'll
is
talk
his what is his skill set? Like okay, so we're you like the Dolphins, right? So we're scouts for the Miami Dolphins.
I got
What's your
the game on.
breakdown?
We're in overtime right now. Go ahead.
So what's your breakdown, strengths and weaknesses? So you said his skill set.
Sure.
Define that for me, Mike.
I like his size, but 6'3", 220 pounds. I like
Okay.
his experience. I think he is very good in the short to intermediate passing game. Those deep outs and corners he throws, 20 yards downfield. You see a lot of them to Lindsey and Davis. I think he's very good. I think he's very good on, you saw it, Florida State, touchdown pass to Austin. I believe just this past weekend, another one to Austin on those 30 to 35-yard fades. He's great on those. I think he drops them.
You can make an argument that was actually a bad ball. I mean, where it landed was perfect, but I would have liked to see it a yard ahead of him. Just saying, he could have ran underneath it versus a miraculous catch.
Yeah, I could have got a 90. I could have got a 100 on a test, but I got a 97. Still pretty good. But I'm starting. You're starting to turn me a little bit on his arm strength. You text me earlier in the game. Something about his strength. I was like, I don't know about that. Like, I think the dude can chuck it, but yeah, I'm starting to turn a little bit on you for you. So, all right, how was my quarterback analysis there? And then what's your take, Mike?
Don't quit your day job, Mike. How's that? I'm kidding. No, it's good. It was accurate. You like his size.
This is my day job, so.
You like his size. I'm saying as a scout, you like his size, but then also you're a fan of Drew Pine, and who has no size. So
that's his. Yeah.
Jack Cohn. Does he have the arm strength? Like, can he technically, physically, can he literally throw the ball 60 yards? Probably yes. But you've seen him miss Lindsey enough times deep where Lindsey is a burner, we know. I don't think he's like as gifted, body control wise, etc. I don't think he's as polished as Will Fuller was, who is Lindsey's comp. You always get that as a comp, but Lindsey's open and he overthrows it because he can't like stroke the ball. Like when I just like he strokes it where it's a nice easy stroke where he's because he doesn't have that natural arm strength, that natural whip that he has to like overdo it and then he overthrows it because he doesn't have like a natural sort of just stroke it. Like dude's open, stroke it, man. Yes, the offensive line is again trash, but that's more of a reason why you play a Pine or you play Tyler. It just that's the game that we're playing right now. That's the hand that we've been dealt. It doesn't seem to be improving. So we're gonna leave a 50% thrower out there. He's gonna complete 50% of his balls, can't push the ball downfield, and we're gonna take 6 sacks a game. Whereas like Tyler or Pine played great. Like
He
I'm for
did.
Pine. I'm not a big. I just don't think that Cohen is the guy. I just don't think he is. Like, and I root for him. He's Notre Dame's quarterback, but I don't see it right now. And Pine's got mobility, but then you said you Pine goes in and plays with the same damn line, Mike, and goes what,
Sure.
7 for 9, and he moves, slides out of the pocket, he has some presence, doesn't freak out, delivers the ball. That's what you're going to need is just a little bit more athleticism. And I'm telling you, dude, like when Pine and when Tyler goes in the game, I'm not physically there, but it seems watching it on TV that it's palpable that like the energy level on the sidelines and the team in general. Pine's got some shit to him. Like he has some moxie, right? Like he's got a little bit of Baker in him, like doing the Conor McGregor out there. Like this is what we practice all week for, and this is what we train for. And having a kid like Pine out there that brings a little bit of juice and a little bit of moxie, the team responds. And yeah, I just don't think that Cohn's the guy, man. I just don't. And then also, Mike, his very first series, he almost threw a pick six, a similar type play that he threw against Toledo. Similar throw, similar coverage, similar routes. Guy dropped a pick six. So we don't like we look at like, oh, Cohen's like infallible. It's like, dude, he's a 50% thrower that takes a boatload, takes a half a dozen sacks.
Infallible.
It's not like he's.
I haven't
I
seen
didn't
his
like that
infallible.
Kelly came. I didn't like that Kelly came out and said that Cohen's our starter. I did listen to his post game on field interview. He's covered in Gatorade, and he said something. I think it was Catherine Tappan was interviewing him. He was talking about Cohn and getting into how steady he is and how poised he is, but he said he kind of won the job. Go back and for anybody that recorded the game, he goes, he kind of won the job, which I thought was a bit odd. He kind of won the job, but we'll see how that plays out. I don't think it was smart strategically to say that Cohn's our starter. And then if Cohn's got a bum wheel all week, he's still the starter, but Pine's going to get all the reps because Cohn can't practice. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, Mike.
Going back to my day job, being a media type, I in covering Kelly Pressers, he's smart in what he's saying. He knows how to not
Sure.
create, crap storms with if he said I'm not sure if Cohn's the starter, we know we would get there. So all right,
So are you taking that statement with a grain of salt then?
yes,
Because
I
he's just
am
saying that so
personally.
as to not create a
I
controversy?
I'm taking it with a grain of salt as a possibility. I'm not saying that he's being distruthful, and I don't like to say he's not telling the truth because I think there's
Oh, there's
gamesmanship.
gamesmanship.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
But I'm not. I wouldn't rule it out, but I think Cohn's the guy. So all right, we're gonna talk more quarterbacks, of course, with Mike Goolsby. If you're with us live, make sure you hit that thumbs up. Appreciate you guys. Super chat from Connor, really appreciate it. I stopped doing the DJ air horn. I don't know if you guys really like that or not. But I feel like sometimes it might
I
be.
don't miss it.
You
I
don't
don't
miss it,
miss it.
Mike? All right,
I
we're
don't.
trying to replace it with something else, kind of Notre Dame themed when we get a super chat, but TBD on that. Connor says, Mike, not sure if you guys discussed this yet, but how do you feel about the offensive line going up against Cincinnati? Really appreciate the super chat, Connor.
Yes, it's been discussed. Connor, my take was something's got to change, and I think it's specific to like personnel. Cade Madden can't play, dude. He can't play. So if I was going to sub somebody out, he's a transfer. He's not one of he's not one of us. He hasn't. I just don't think he's gotten to that level of like credibility or level of respect, I think you sit Cade Madden down. Maybe you move some people around. And then I'm also challenging Jared Patterson as the leader of that group, an NFL, future NFL guy. You got to start. I don't know what the approach is, but you've got to hold your room. You've got to increase the level of accountability. You just have to.
Another super chat here from Matt, sticking on the quarterback discussion. He says, thoughts on this? Pine looked good, but he's fresh with the offensive line and a smaller guy who maybe starts to look around just like Cone in a few weeks from all the hits. And benching Cone could ruin him. What do you think, Mike?
So that's a good question, Matt. And I was thinking about this earlier today, like, and who could blame Jack for being having a bit of happy feet? He looks a little bit reminiscent of Ian Book back there with the happy feet, but he'll stand in there. I do think that there's something to be said where, to answer Matt's question, where like ignorance is bliss, whereas Drew Pine doesn't know any better at this point. So like you see on one of his series, like he just gets again crushed, where a 300-pound basically nose tackle playing defensive end beats Tosh Baker inside, inexplicably so. You would set so heavy on the inside. That guy's not going to beat me outside or upfield, but he gets absolutely crushed, comes right back like nothing happened. So he's, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and maybe a little bit too naive to get those happy feet just yet. Whereas like, maybe Matt's a fan of the NFL. I like to watch the NFL. If anybody watched Ben Roethlisberger last year or watched Eli Manning at the end of their career, those guys are seeing ghosts. They're hearing footsteps because they've taken all those hits of those years, and like, I'm not trying to get hit like that anymore. And they're getting rid of the ball quicker, etc. So you're going to get probably the opposite of that with Drew, where he might stand in there just because he doesn't know any better, and also he has more athleticism to escape. And then I'll say this too about Drew. Couple different running plays there at the start of the fourth quarter. Dude's out there blocking,
Yeah, I
right?
love
And
that.
I'm just telling you, love it. Absolutely love it. And that's leadership to me. And that's the type of stuff that gets the bench up and just makes dudes play harder. I think there's something there in terms of like what Cone brings to the team in terms of an intangible, whether it's like, oh, it's steady leadership, it's calmness, it's whatever. But if you're just a stoic in the huddle versus you've got Drew Pine out there blocking people, doing the Conor McGregor, Tyler's out there smiling. I think they bring a different vibe to the team, and I think the latter two, the team seems to be responding to it. I really, truly do.
A couple more super chats to get to. Elroy says, I went post-game reactions with Goolsby when he's still all fired up. We did the post-game shows with Mr. Goolsby last year, but Goolsby likes the Sunday shows. He likes to be able to rewatch that game. Any comment here, Mike, before we get another super
Yeah,
chat?
I like to be able to. Yeah, and we might go back to it, but I do like to be able to watch the game. And just last year, we did great, Mike, and kudos to you, but
It's all
we were
you, baby.
flying by the seat of our. There was zero prep, guys. Like zero prep. It was like use the restroom, grab a beer, Mike, glass of water, whatever, and just start talking. So I like to be a little bit more prepared. And I think having a chance to watch the game back a second time or a third time helps me do that. But I can still get fired up.
Yeah. All right, Nick Davis, who is, if I'm seeing this name correctly, I believe he is a very strong supporter of Drew Pine, who's dropping a super chat. Really appreciate it. He says, Cone belongs in Wisconsin's offense or Notre Dame's last year. That's what I've said. If you put last year's Notre Dame offensive line on this team or Cone on last year's team, however you want to look at it, I think Cone is the perfect quarterback. It's just this offensive line just does not, play to his strengths. He's a tough kid and good leader, as Nick says. He says Pine can pilot the offense with this offensive line. He says Lawrence Keys is the missing ingredient. I don't know if Lawrence Key, if that's what you're saying. I don't know if a slot receiver is making a whole big of a difference here. So appreciate the super chat, Nick. Look, I'll say I've been a huge Drew Pine guy. Like I just what I love watching him throw the football. I love seeing him in high school. The clips that we saw of him in spring and fall camp and whatnot. Just throws a beautiful football, but are we just is it small sample size we have for a lot of people to just be jumping on the Drew Pine bandwagon? I mean, is there any truth to that, Mike? Like, is it? I mean, I
I
don't
don't.
know.
It's all case by case, and it's subjective. But I texted you my thoughts or my notes that I just kind of compile in my phone as I'm watching, and I put Pine's your starter. And I'd pull back on that a little bit. Maybe Pine isn't your starter, but I think what this gentleman is trying to say, and what I think I'm trying to say, is it might be anybody other than Cone. It's just slow release, lack of arm strength, somewhat immobile in terms of like he just takes a lot of sacks, and so it might not be Pine, and we might not be anointing. Maybe it's some sort of a share, but I don't know. I don't know what the if Jack Cohn goes out there, completes 50% of his balls, almost throws another pick six, takes 6 sacks, and we're like, yep, he's our starter. It's like, well, how many games of this do we need to see where we can at least have an honest conversation or an honest dialogue in that coaching room about, is he giving us the best chance to win? Because it's not like Pine went out there and stunk it up. He played awesome.
Yeah, he did.
So I don't know if it's pro Pine. I don't know if it's pro Buckner, if it's just a little bit more of an anti Jack. The upside isn't there, and you might need a little bit of something magic at that position because of the offensive line.
Sure, sure.
It
Yeah,
seems to be more and more apparent.
I think we agree for the most part here. But the biggest thing for me is I think Cohen is the no doubter guy if he has more time.
But he
Um,
doesn't, Mike. So it's an invalid argument, dude. He doesn't.
I mean, it's not an invalid argument when I'm having the caveat of it's a what if. So yeah, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things because it's a what if. But I think drop back throwing the football. I think Cohn's the best quarterback, but that's just not, like you said, it's really not the situation right now. So, all right, a couple more things, and we're going to get into straight question talk. So, all three quarterbacks should be healthy against Cincinnati. Kelly said after the game that Cohn will be the starter. Man, Mike, if you're Brian Kelly, what are you doing at the quarterback position? He seems to want to start Cohn unless there's some gamesmanship. I mean, is there a three-way quarterback battle? I mean, what are you doing, Mike? Or personally, if you were Brian Kelly, are you starting Pine and throwing Buckner in there a little bit? What do you think?
Sure. I've seen enough. I've seen enough from Cone. I've seen enough, and I want upside. And I just think, given the current status of the offensive line, I'm going with an athlete at that position. Pine can, again, quicker release. He can spin the ball, has some moxie. He's been in the system. And I think with Cone's injury, and it happened to him at Wisconsin, where he got Wally pipped, right? He got hurt, and then he loses his job because of it. So it gives Kelly a reason to say, well, that Jack couldn't recover, couldn't rehab quick enough, and we're going with Drew. It's not necessarily and given that scenario, if that's how that move went down, if that's how that press conference went down, if that's what the messaging is going to be. Jack can't come back; he's physically not ready. There is no quarterback controversy, right? Unless Pine goes out there and stinks it up, and then you got a problem. But I just think with the O line being as bad as it is, I can't going into the season. I can't imagine Coach Kelly and that staff. They knew there was probably going to be some growing pains and some hiccups along the way, but I don't think anybody could have projected it'd be as bad as it is. I mean, it's Notre Dame's offensive line, dude. And you can't take sacks. And then furthermore, dude, Mike, to my point, just to keep like building and building and building on this point, Jack Cohn got hurt because of pressure, right? So it's like, you keep getting your quarterback knocked down, like, yeah, they're going to get hurt. And that's what happened. So it's like, put somebody back there that can move around a little bit more and avoid that type of the pressure, because it ain't getting fixed anytime soon. Joe Alt, a true freshman that just put on 50 pounds in the last 12 months, like, I love him, right? But it's just like, come on, we can't be thinking a fourth string true freshman is going to be that's new to the position is going to be our fix.
Sure.
Get real.
Sure. Um,
Have some balls and make a decision. Because putting Cone back out there with the same line in front of him, like it's just gonna how's it gonna change? Oh, this week's the week that it's all gonna come together. No, make a move. Either switch up the offensive line or put in a more mobile quarterback. Something has to give.
yeah, I mean
Especially looking at our schedule coming up here, dude.
right, which is kind of
Yeah,
what we're going to get into next. My last thought on the quarterbacks. All right, you got the throwing the football scale and how good they are in the mobility scale. Like I don't know. I mean, Pine is more mobile than Cone, but I don't think it's a great deal more. I mean, heck, he got sacked and there was a forced fumble recovery for Wisconsin. He just, I mean, if you don't have time to throw the football, I mean, Lamar Jackson back there might be the only guy who you could put back there and you'd be like, all right, it doesn't really matter about the offensive line. Like, he could just make things happen. Any rebuttal on that, Mike, before we move on to the schedule?
well, the only other thing that I think I could talk about in terms of the quarterback position in the offense as a whole, and this isn't specific to Pine or to Cone or whomever, but we solely operate out of shotgun, and the quarterback never moves, right? So if like football 101, like punt block, right? So like the punter lines up where he lines up, but the block point as like for your edge rushers and whatever is week to week, depending on if the kid takes 1 step, 2 steps, how many steps does that punter take? But the block point when we're rushing to block the punter is somewhere in front of the punter, right? We're not rushing at the punter, we're rushing to the spot in front of him. Are you with me, Mike? That
Sure.
makes sense?
Sure.
So I think if you correlate that to an opposing defensive line, they're rushing a spot. So because he's out of shotgun, he doesn't move. The spot never moves. So throwing it out there, I'm no guru, but could you put Cone under center so that we could fix in or work in a 3-step, a 5-step, a 7-step drop so that the spot moves? That's just something that it's like, dude, he's always in the same spot, so guys can just pin their ears back. And there's no threat of him ever leaving the pocket, Mike, to further the point, which is why you see those defensive ends rushing inside because there's no fear that Cone's going to escape. I mean, that's, again, basic football. Like if a high school defensive end is, don't give up contain, don't give up contain. They're willingly giving up contain because they know he's never going to leave.
Sure.
So that's just something else to sprinkle in. I haven't heard that discussed, and I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility to put a quarterback under center.
All right, let's
and move the spot. Yes.
Before we get straight into questions here is the upcoming schedule. It looked really tough about 3 weeks ago. Now, not so much. I can't remember what Cincinnati. I want to say they just lost here recently. No, they're undefeated. They're in the top 10. No, they struggled against somebody. Is that right? I'm sorry, I can't remember on Cincinnati, but that's certainly going to be a tough game. I've seen a few different lines. Notre Dame favored by a point, Cincinnati favored by a point. But that's certainly going to be a barn burner. You hope, Marcus Freeman, I don't know how much of his knowledge of the Cincinnati offense will kind of help him preparing there. At Virginia Tech, that game doesn't look as scary as it once did. USC is a dumpster fire. They just lost to Oregon State. North Carolina.
USC is really USC's status as a program is almost as unfortunate as our offensive line.
Yeah,
it's tragic.
Look, this is probably not a popular opinion for a show full of Notre Dame fans, but college football is better when USC. Just give me some freaking school on the West Coast that is great. No Oregon's
doubt.
nice, but I don't know. I think college football's better.
No, sports are better with the blue bloods. There's no doubt about it. Mike.
And when it's not a regional sport, when the West Coast is not completely irrelevant, but I digress. North Carolina, I think they just lost this past weekend too, right? And then you got Navy. Virginia, Georgia Tech, Stanford, but just kind of focusing here on the October games. Notre Dame's 4-0. They just beat Wisconsin by 28 points, and we're mainly kind of focused on the struggles that Notre Dame's had. But here they are 4-0. I feel that the Wisconsin game, again, although they won by 28, there's still a ton of concerns, and we talked about most of them with the offensive line there. Defense looks great, but how do you feel about this October stretch? Do you have any predictions of what Notre Dame might face these next 4 games? I mean, could you see them coming out of there 8-0?
So yes, you could, to answer the question. When I bet college sports, Mike, one of the biggest things that I take into account is like the culture of the program and the types of kids that they have and their play style. Cincinnati plays real loose, super aggressive. They're kind of a fun team to watch. Like in USC, and I'll be a little bit all over the place talking culture. Like USC has athletes. They know how to play. I think they've got a huge culture problem. Probably a lot of kids that are pouty over there. They've had so many different coaches, but USC is going to show up to play us. Like those kids know how to play football. They know how to turn it on. I think by choice they're turning it off. They're almost like throwing a temper tantrum over there. Virginia Tech is a tough place to play at home. They always have talent. But I think that'll be a great environment. I think we'll respond well on the road. But it's a lame answer, and Tim had the same answer that I will for this line of questioning, Mike, is you have to take it week by week. Fans are always going to freak out. I thought we were going to lose, Mike, Tuesday of last week. I thought we were going to lose to Wisconsin, and then I just kind of thought more and more and more, and I was like, oh, we're going to beat Wisconsin. So I think it's natural. The only time Notre Dame fans are going to be happy is when we beat Alabama handily, right? It's just we were ecstatic last year when we beat Clemson without the number 1 pick overall at quarterback. But that's part of fandom, is that the freaking out and the anxiety. It's just part of being a fan. But we need to take that week-to-week approach, figure out something on the offensive line. When we talk offensive line, sorry to keep going back to it, but it's like the errors, the physical mistakes in pass protection, the mental brain farts in pass protection, they're glaring. But our run blocking may be almost worse
Right.
because Cone, I mean, there was clean pockets yesterday for Cone to deliver the ball. I'm going to say that I think we need to work Tyree in a little bit more. I was texting with a friend during that game, and then literally the next play he runs a kickoff back. Tyree's a special player. Kyron's a special player. Kyron's a captain. There's no knock on me whatsoever for Kyron, but it's not working up to this point. He's also put the ball on the ground twice in 4 games. I think that if the carries yesterday went 18 to Kyron and 2 to Tyree, why couldn't we do, 12 to Kyron and a few more to Tyree? I just think he gives you a little bit more big play potential just to be able to cut things up. If we're going to get plays in the run game, they're going to have to be big plays. And I just think that, and Kyron's busted some big runs too, but I think that Tyree might give you like a 20% higher likelihood of busting a big run than Kyron will right now. It can't hurt just to mix it in. It can't hurt.
Hmm.
Can't hurt. I mean, we ran the ball for 3 yards yesterday, with the
Yeah.
adjusted yardage.
Yeah. Adjust yards from 30s, but yeah, I ain't saying a whole lot. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we're talking about pass protection, O line, quarterback play so much, but the run game, I mean, if you have play action, like that just opens it up even more for other things. But
Well, I go back to like the O line meeting room, whether it's Coach Quinn or whether it's Jarrett, our center, All American type, potential first round type guy. Like it just seems like there's so many whiffs and there's so little movement in terms of moving bodies. And like, I saw a play where Kane Madden pulled and just like hit a linebacker, and it's like they're like sleepwalking. I just don't see the level of care and like the level of like badassery that we've come to expect from our offensive linemen, and it's
All right, folks, we lost connection there with Mike Goolsby. Internet lost out there. So really appreciate those who joined us live. We lost Mike. So yeah, these live shows, internet craps out for a second, and then you're SOL. So really appreciate you guys. Hit that thumbs up before you get out of here. We will catch you guys throughout the week at blueandgold.com, our YouTube page, our website, podcast channel. We have you locked for Notre Dame football, recruiting coverage, all that good stuff. So appreciate you guys. We will catch you next time.